So I've had a good look at Jocelyn, Michelle, and I'll talk about that. But just before I do, I want to go over a couple of things you told me in the story. Now, Jocelyn's coming up to 2 months, and basically she's been extremely good baby, right?
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah?
She's quiet. She's calm. Everybody who sees her can't believe how good she is. She just lies there.
So she's so quiet and calm and lying there. The neighbours are envious, are they? Is that the thing?
Yeah.
And there has not been much crying, and she hasn't been like a colicky baby, I think you said.
And she's even, she's even been sleeping through the night, which is not, nobody else gets that this early, I've heard.
Now, the only thing you'd noticed was that feeding, she wasn't brilliant at feeding and tended to fall asleep before she'd finished the entire breast's worth of milk, as it were. Is that right?
Maybe that's me, though. I don't know, but I am having to really encourage her. Sometimes I really have to kind of, push her head, and sometimes I have to, it's awful, like pull her feet and her arms and stuff.
Wake her up.
To get her kind of enthused about it,
Yeah.
And, they were telling me I was supposed to do both sides
That's
when I'm
right,
nursing, but, sometimes she falls asleep before I get to the second side.
So she's sometimes asleep, and I think the only other problem you noticed was that for Jocelyn, having her bowels open, having a bowel movement, was actually quite an effort.
Yeah, it looks to me like she's straining. What do I know about babies? But I think when I watch her, she seems to really be pushing and straining, and seems to kind of be in great discomfort, I think.
So it looks more of an effort and more uncomfortable than you'd expect from a 2-month-old.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe it was something I ate or something. I don't know.
Yes. Look, what I want to do, Michelle, is I want to describe to you what I've found from looking at Jocelyn and examining her.
Sure. Well,
is it okay if I... sorry.
Yeah, no, I wondered why you were listening to her heart for so long.
While I was listening to that, I'm going to answer that. I'll come on and answer that exactly. I did spend quite a time looking at various bits, and just as you say, listening to her heart. And there's a reason for that. And it started, the first thing that I was noticing, when I looked at her hands in some detail, there was a crease that goes all the way across Jocelyn's hand, which most people don't have. And that just triggered in my mind that there might be a problem, and that's why I was looking. And when I came to look at Jocelyn's head and face, there were a couple of things that I noticed there. Her mouth was open, and that's not in itself very abnormal, that's fine. And the tongue was a little bit floppy. But then around the eyes, there are the folds above the eyes, and they look a little bit slanted, and the saddle of the nose, the bridge of the nose here, looked a little bit low. And sometimes that, as it were, collection of things, a baby who's a little bit sort of floppy and tired, and also I did notice that as I lifted her up, as we were lifting her up to get her undressed, her head control was just a little bit less, she was a little bit floppier, as it were, from the head control than one would expect from a 2-month-old. Of course, this is your first baby, so you wouldn't know that. But sometimes that can be associated with problems in the heart, and that's why I listen to the heart. I'm glad to say no problems in the heart. Heart's absolutely fine.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
But Michelle, this combination of this particular face with the slightly slanted eyes and flat nose and the crease in the hand and the floppiness and the tiredness, it is a known sort of what we call a syndrome, a collection of things. And in Jocelyn's case, I think that what Jocelyn has is a syndrome that you may have heard about before, and it's called Down's syndrome. Have you heard about that?
Oh, sure, I've heard about that.
Yeah. What's the first thing that pops into your mind when you hear?
Well, I suppose the way babies look,
Yeah.
I mean, they all look similar, don't they?
You are quite correct. To some extent, Down's syndrome people all share certain features. as well at the same time as they look like mum and dad. And
Yeah.
Jocelyn looks like mum and dad, right?
Yeah, she
You know?
looks a lot like her dad.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But in addition,
Yeah.
she's got these other features around the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the hand, which are, as it were, additional, which make me pretty certain that what's going on is Down's syndrome. Now, I need to tell you that it's something that people are born with. Down syndrome is actually an abnormality of the chromosomes. In fact, we even know which chromosomes are affected. And it just happens. It's a random thing. It's a bit more likely to happen as one is older at the time of pregnancy, and of course that's common nowadays anyway.
Right.
So it is a well-known syndrome that can happen in this kind of situation. And what we need to do, first of all, is we need a blood test to make sure that that is the correct diagnosis. So what I'm going to do is organise just a little blood test. It won't upset her. It's kind of upsetting for the parents, of course. But we need to have that diagnosis confirmed.
So do you think that she's mentally retarded? Is that what you think?
Very important point. Obviously, at 2 months, mental retardation is you can't measure it. You couldn't say. The future, it's impossible to say. Jocelyn may or may not grow up to be a bit slower than her, people of the same age, peers, And as time goes on, we'll have to see that. But that is one of the things that we need to keep a close eye on, is her, as it were, mental development and also motor development and height. And so I feel like I'm knocking you sideways. This is very distressing to hear for the first time when
Thank you.
the baby seems
She seems fine.
perfect. Yes.
She seems fine. Look at her.
Yes. I mean, I think if I wasn't experienced in this, she doesn't look not fine. She looks fine. She does absolutely. It's only these additional signs that alert us to the fact that Jocelyn probably has Down syndrome.
So is she going to be okay?
Well, as I said, it's impossible to predict today how Jocelyn is going to be when she's 5 years old and 10 years old and so on. All that one can say is that there is a possibility, really a probability, that she will be a bit slower than her peers, than people of the same age. What we need to do, Michelle, is number one, do the test, and number
Right.
two, keep a close eye and see how she goes as time goes on. I was going to propose to you that when we sit down with the blood test, why don't you bring Mr. Saunders, your husband, along, and maybe the three of us, or the four of us, I guess, the four of us can sit down and go over the results of the blood test and talk about how we're going to keep an eye on the future and so on.
That sounds good.
Michelle,
Are you sure?
Yeah. I think most mothers, their first reaction is exactly what you say. Are you sure? Could it be wrong? Could this, is it possible?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm only a human being, and it could be wrong. And in many respects, I hope you believe me when I say I hope I am wrong. But I'm pretty sure that is the diagnosis. We will be absolutely sure with the results of the blood test. But I think most parents want to know more than just, that the doctor is looking at the patient. They want proof to know for sure. And that's what we will know with the blood test if it's as I think it will be. It's terribly hard, isn't it?
So you mean she's never going to be like other kids, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that's a possibility.
Is it because of my age?
Not really, because this can happen at any age of the mother. It's just that it's one of those things that does get a little bit more likely as the mother is older. So the honest answer to your question, if you say, is it because of my age? No, because there are plenty of people who are pregnant at your age and many years older who don't have this problem. It's just that the risk of Down syndrome goes up with age a little bit. So it's not because of your age. It's not like that. You know, please, I don't want anybody, particularly you, to feel guilty about this. It's not your fault. It's not because of in that sense. It's one of the things that happens.
Oh. I never thought that, you know, there was anything wrong. I thought she was just a really good baby.
In all respects, that's exactly the case. She's a really good baby, and these additional features made us sort of focus on this possibility. Let's take it step by step, Michelle. Unless there are any other more questions you wanted to ask right now, let's organise the blood test. Then you and Mr. Saunders come back. We'll sit down and we'll go over it all again and go over how we're going to manage things in the future.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, we'll organise the test.
Okay.